The government introduced legislation that would allow municipalities the opportunity to use red light cameras and photo radar. Police and municipalities have been asking for these changes, and I believe this type of legislation brings New Brunswick in line with about 6 provinces or so. And I also do remember during stages of the legislation, opposition parties expressed concerns that those that chose to break the law weren't being treated fairly. Could you provide an update to the committee on this initiative, particularly how municipalities may be able to use these tools?
Good morning, sir, and thank you for the question. Yeah, Bill 51, the Image Capturing Enforcement Systems Act, was introduced in 2021 and has been given royal assent. It hasn't been implemented yet. It needs regulations, and it needs some conversations that our friends in the local government sector are patiently waiting for. So what the bill does is simply makes it possible for evidence gathered by red light cameras or intersection cameras and other forms of devices that capture an image that prove an offense was committed. And the simple logic of this is, as every community faces pressure on their law enforcement resources to be at all places and do all things, and recognizing that especially in municipalities, people going through red lights is an obvious risk of collision, and it's an irritant that municipal councillors and mayors hear about, and staff and police hear about. And the technology has been successfully used in a lot of jurisdictions to help reduce the phenomenon of people running red lights. The technology has evolved a lot in the years that it's been in use across the country, so we're confident that we could open the door to this. What we see is someday soon, municipalities will be empowered by regulation to choose where to install these devices. The device would snap a picture of the license plate of a vehicle that goes through a red and not a yellow or a green, but only a red light. And that image would be transmitted to ultimately a person who would be sitting at a workstation, who would confirm that the license plate is readable and confirm the photo snapped at the same time of the red light, and it would generate a ticket that would be delivered to the registered owner of the vehicle. Like every other ticket, including one delivered by hand, it could be a person will get notice that they have the right to dispute the ticket. But that's the simple part of it. The bill has been given assent. The hard part of it is municipalities is getting the details around about the parameters of the technology, what safeguards can be put in place so people won't feel like they're being surprised by these devices. And also we owe the communities a hard conversation around how they can fund these technologies. Communities pay all the costs of local law enforcement as it is, and not a lot of them had a lot of cash, frankly, sitting around deciding to continue to spend what they spend on police and then spend some more on technology. So we're looking at some creative solutions for how we can help municipalities make that choice to improve public safety, reduce collisions in their community without compromising their policing budgets.
Thank you very much. Changing focus just a little bit, the government recently made improvements to the Safer Community and Neighborhood Act that drew ire, I guess, from some opposition members. Could you update the committee on how particular changes are making SCAN a more effective tool to combat crime? And particularly in my riding in Carleton, York, the western side of the province, there have been issues. Could you just basically share with the committee SCAN and how it's working?
Yes, sir. The bill, Bill 73, is through committee and awaits third reading in the House. It amends the Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act. Now that act is not new. It was enacted in 2009. Similar legislation exists in 5 other provinces. And what it does is what it did a dozen years ago is it created a civil process that's designed deliberately to complement criminal processes for addressing the harm that ongoing criminal operations do to neighborhoods and communities. It doesn't replace the criminal process. No one is messing with the criminal process. The starting point is that open criminal activity does real harm to neighbors. Everybody likes to believe that what my neighbor is doing is my neighbor's business, and many New Brunswickers like to live by that code. But the reality is, if your neighbor is running a drug house or a gang clubhouse or an illegal gambling operation, that does affect your quality of life. It attracts people coming and going. It attracts people coming and going that you don't want next door to you. And the SCAN Act allows for dealing effectively with the blight on a community without the stigma of a criminal conviction and get people their quality of life back. It is tremendously popular with people who find themselves living next door to drug dealers. It's popular with police forces that appreciate the Department of Justice and Public Safety helping deal with low-level drug crime without a massive police resource allocation. It's not so popular with people who do run drug houses. So the way it works is people can complain to us, Department of Justice and Public Safety. We have a Safer Communities Director. They can even complain anonymously as long as we have some sense that it's of who that person is. They don't need to become witnesses. So we receive detailed information from somebody that I see this happening at such and such an address, and I live in the vicinity. We don't rely on those informants' information to take action. We dispatch investigators. It's not a police investigation. It doesn't lead to criminal charges. We do talk to the police of jurisdiction to make sure we're not getting in the way of an operation that I already have ongoing. Assuming they don't, we simply observe the property. And the SCAN director has the ability to apply to court for an order to either to stop certain activity or even to vacate the property if they can demonstrate that the property is habitually being used for criminal activity. And there's specified crimes, the ones I mentioned and a few others. We don't have to make go to court and get a whole lot of orders. The way this works typically is that for some folks, when an investigator comes up to them and tells them they've got a couple 100 hours of observation and some videotape of criminal activity taking place there, and they need to adjust their behavior or move along, a number of them do adjust their behavior or move along. That doesn't work. Some of these sites are rental properties, and landlords are typically not happy to find out that their properties are being used for drug houses, for example, and the landlord will take care of the problem. And in worst case scenario, we can apply for an order. So this has been a heavy emphasis. We put renewed emphasis on this year, as we're hearing from, yes, sir, in your part of the province, right through this River Valley, but really throughout New Brunswick. There are pockets of concern with people who've located themselves out of the eyesight of municipal police forces in more remote areas typically, and they are making a real negative contribution to their communities. People are afraid not only of them, but they're afraid of the addicts who come to them to get what they need and steal everything that isn't nailed down, and some things that are. So SCAN is all about just dealing with some of the nuisance harm that's around the periphery of the drug trade. It's up to the police to investigate and catch and charge the serious bad guys. Safer Communities is about getting quality of life back in communities, and we've had to renewed our effort, approaching 6 dozen in the last year. Properties vacated, only one order required to do that, but properties vacated entirely by drug dealers.